Hi, I'm Mark and this is Foothill Paint Fabrication. Today we're going to get back on these 1950 Chevy truck fenders. These are the rears. We're going to get some body filler on them, get that sanded out and all smoothed out and get them ready for prime. So let's jump on these and knock them out real quick. Okay, just want to take a couple of seconds or a minute here to talk about body filler. Some people call it Bondo, like calling everything a Band-Aid. It's just a brand name. This is lightweight from Evercoat. I use similar products. Usually there's 2 or 3, whatever's really, if they're running a special at the paint store, that's what I'll pick up. So you want to look for non-clog. Most of the new ones are really pretty good. If you go really cheap, it loads up your sandpaper, it doesn't lay down well, and it actually causes more work than saving. So throw the extra $10 or $15 at your body filler and you know, get something that's good. I get it in a gallon. Some of this stuff doesn't come in quarts at the paint store, but you can probably find it elsewhere at your auto parts store, stuff like that. So if you're doing small projects, just get a quart at a time. I use this quite a bit, so I should probably buy it in quarts because it can go bad on you. It'll separate, it's hard to stir up, but you want to store it in a cool, dry place. And then also your hardeners want to be stored in a good place. So I've got some older tubes of cream hardener here. I'm going to check them. This is a brand new can, so I've got a brand new tube of cream hardener. But what you want to do is knead these very carefully and feel that it still feels like cream on the inside. If you feel like liquid or chunks, like thin liquid, that means it's separated and you need to dispose of it because it's no good. You'll squish it out, you'll put it out on your body filler, and it'll come out liquid and then chunks of the cream part. And there's no way to reconstitute that back together. So do yourself a favor, don't try to use it. If it feels bad, go buy it. You can buy just the cream hardener at the paint store. So make sure you use good cream hardener when you're doing it. So that one feels pretty good. This one feels good too. Whoop. So what I'll do is I'll put a little bit out on a paper towel just to test it before I squish it out on some good body filler. So, and of course I know this one's good, but before you use them, always knead them around to get them mixed back up real good. And then store them in a cool place, and if they get really old, it's going to go bad on you, so get new cream hardener. Now the body filler, it will separate, so you got to stir it up well. Don't just use off the top all the time. If you're using a lot of it, you don't have to stir it up that much, but get yourself a good stir stick and get down to the bottom and really dig it up, because the resins are going to be on top and the fillers are going to settle out. So I like to turn my cans over once in a while in the cabinet just so it kind of keeps itself stirred up. So, and lastly is how you apply the body filler. Now I use these metal spreaders. There are plastic ones out there, I really don't like them. I started off using those and they actually cause more problems than they solve, and these are easy to clean. So if you get body filler on here that you can't get off, you let it set too long or whatever. I know the plastic ones you're supposed to be able to bend and it pops right off. These actually are really easy to clean. I keep some steel wool around if they get really dirty, or you can just simply take a razor blade and slice it off. So, and you always want to make sure your leading edge here is nice and there's no nicks or chunks out of it, because obviously that's going to translate into your body filler. These flex well. They've got the little rubber thing or plastic on the top here, so you can bend it. You know, just put your fingers on that if you're going around you know, a rounded area like we're going to be doing here in a minute on these fenders, and then it springs right back. You know, some guys like to use a big white putty knife, as long as it's thin, so you can get some flex out of it. You know, that's the most important part. So choose your tools wisely, spend a few dollars. These aren't very expensive. You can get them on Amazon, paint store, wherever. I picked these up at the paint store. I think it was a 3-pack, and they work out really well. So I'm gonna stir up this body filler, and we're gonna blow off the fenders, and then we're gonna get some body filler mixed up. Okay, I've got the body filler all mixed up. It was separated, not bad, but separated. So I scoop from the bottom and pull that up. Now these are bamboo stir sticks, which are really nice because they're super strong. They bend a long way before they crack. So you're able to dig down in there and really stir it up. I probably took 8 minutes to stir this up really well. So it's ready to go. So what I'll do is I'll use one stir stick to remove material out and put it on my mixing plate here. Now, you can buy these. You can use a piece of cardboard. I don't recommend cardboard, but you can use anything that's hard and flat. It needs to be flat so you can scoop all around and everything else. I'll show you a mixing technique here in a minute. What I did was I just took a hole saw and cut a hole in the middle, or in the corner I mean, and so I could put my thumb in there like that, see? So I can actually hang on to this thing without doing this and my hand getting fatigued. So I can spread my hand out underneath and I can mix it up well, and then I can walk around the car, or fender in this case, and apply the material. So I'll use one stir stick to put the material on the mixing plate, and then I'll use another stir stick to mix it up. Now this stir stick will never go in there. And you don't want to use the one you scoop it out with to mix with, because it's got a lot of body filler on there and you're just using that as a scooper, right? Now this one, what I'll do is you'll see me over time, I tossed my other one when I cleaned the shop, but there was one with a blob of hardened body filler on each end. And I'll take the grinder and I'll grind that into kind of a little spatula. And I'll keep using that over and over again. That's perfectly fine. But the one you mix with can never go into the virgin body filler, because even hardened body filler, you set that in there, it will cause a reaction, okay? So they can never be mixed. So once hardener touches body filler, it can never go back in the container. The tools you use cannot go back in the container, can't touch it or anything. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to mix up, to film this, it's going to be a little difficult, so this stuff's pretty thin, which is what you want. It's warm, like I said, it's 86 degrees in the shop or more, which is pretty toasty. It's been getting pretty hot here, over 100 degrees every day, and the overnight lows are not cooling off. So everything's kind of warm. So I'm going to do this just 1 or 2 repairs at a time over there. This stuff's like toffee, you kind of don't want to drip it everywhere. But you want to estimate about how much material you need to do the job. Now I'm looking over at the fender, I know they're not very deep, I can see the size areas I'm working. And so I'm going to do 2 over there. I'm going to do the 2 easy ones to start. So I'm going to start off with that much material right there. Now, you don't want to leave the can of body filler open, because there are solvents in there that will evaporate, okay? So you want to keep the lid closed. So when I'm mixing, what I do is I just lay the stir stick like that, and then I just kind of lay the lid over the top. It's not perfect, but it slows it down. Now we talked about checking the the hardener, excuse me, to see if it's any good. So we're going to go with this little one right here, and I'm going to squish a little bit out here and see what it looks like. Now I can see that it still looks good and everything's good. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. Now it's warm in here, so I'm going to do this slowly. I'm not going to get carried away with it, but you want to follow the instructions, but you want to lay out and don't put a blob. What you want to do is you want to lay yourself down a little amount, so you know next time if it's set way too fast on you, you know to shorten that, because it's hard to gauge a little blob, right? But if you lay it down like 1 inch long, it's kind of a little fatter there, it's skinnier there, but it helps me decide how much I've put on, right? So I think that's more than enough. It's probably going to go off too quick if I put more in, but I'm going to go ahead and put another little dab on there. And now I can see the cream hardener is nice and creamy, okay? Now, clock starts right now. I've got everything I need. The fenders are ready. I'm ready to go. So once I start mixing, then it's go time and you have to move to the vehicle quickly, okay? So I pick it up and I'm going to stir this up and try to keep everything in one area. So I'm going to go from the outside in, and you can see there's hardener on the stick, so I'm going to make sure that's stirred up good. We're going to get a good color change here. And I can tell already I went too heavy on this stuff. It's not setting up, but I can just tell. I got a little cocky and put too much in there. So I've got time. So I've got that stirred up pretty good. Now I'm going to wipe my stir stick off, and you can see the hardener on there. Then this is the critical state here. You want to scoop that up and then lay it back on. Now you see all that unmixed material? So we're going to knead this together here until I don't see any streaks in there. And you just pick it up. Now you've got gloves on, right? So don't worry about it if you get it on there. I'm still seeing streaks. So I want to make sure that's good and mixed up before I go over to the car. All right, let's see if I can swing this around here real quick. Okay, so I'm going to take some off, and you have to push down. Okay, you can't just lay it on there like you're buttering bread. You actually have to force that down into the grooves. And you notice I'm going over the edges. That'll all be sanded off, and I actually already sanded all the way around this fender. And I'm going to push and curve the spatula the best I can. And what we're going to try to do is overfill this, but make it the right shape. So there's a little curve that way. If you use a flat one, that's fine. You're going to rough it out and fix it anyways. But I'm looking for low spots, and you don't want to play with it too much. Now I've got one on the other side I'm going to go ahead and do real quick before this sets up on me. Okay, we got this little tiny one up here. And I just want a little bit of material on my edge of my knife. And we're just going to lay that over the top there. Scrape that off. And that's it. That's all we have time for. So I didn't mess around trying to make this perfect. It may have a low spot in it or whatever. That's fine. But it's filled. I think it's completely filled. When we sand it, we're going to get all this off. But when it was ground, I feathered the edges so that body fill will lay right up to the paint. And before I applied, I went over the whole painted area with some 80 grit just to rough it up, because the body filler will lay over the paint. You know, some people say, oh, it's got to be bare steel. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen guys actually just rough up paint and put body filler over it. It's stuck forever. So you know, you can stick this stuff to glass and it's hard to get off. So the thickness in your prep is what's important. So I roughed up that paint around there so it could stick down inside there. Now I've got to clean my tools before they get too hard. Now it's already starting to set up, so I got to get with it. Now what I want to do is clean my board first, okay? Because that body filler is setting up. Now the lighting isn't too good over here. I'm working quick. So I've scraped that nice and smooth, and now I've got to clean this. Okay, so what I use is, this is my little favorite putty knife to do this. Apologize for the lighting, kind of over here. And all I do is just scrape this off before it gets super hard. Now, using steel tools on a plastic spatula is just going to gouge it. So look, there's some on the back side. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to scrape that off right into the trash can, okay? Now, that's not clean enough, right? So we're going to move over to the bench real quick. Okay, so back over to the bench. I'm going to use some lacquer thinner. Now this is recycled lacquer thinner. I'll show you what I do with that at a later date. But this has already been used lacquer thinner that when I'm cleaning guns. So then you just take your lacquer thinner on a paper towel, and you just clean that up, okay? Lacquer thinner will dissolve uncured body filler, all right? So you just wipe it like that, and look, we're perfectly clean. I'm going to take my putty knife, I'm going to wipe that, and it's ready to go for the next time. And I can actually wipe down my board. And you can still see I have body filler on here. Usually after I finish a project, I'll clean this all the way back down to bare steel, or bare aluminum, but in this case, I didn't. So now we're ready to go for the next batch. Okay, when to start sanding, right? So it's tacky, but it's firm, but not super hard yet. So we're going to take a cheese grater and we're going to knock the high spots off. Now your cheese grater is going to get clogged up because this is still sticky, right? So what I use is a little wire brush. I think they sell these at 3-pack at Harbor Freight. I mean, one's steel, one's plastic, and one's brass. So it comes in really handy. So what I'll do is we're just going to shape this really carefully because, you know, I overshot over here, right? And I'm barely pushing down. And I'm just following the contours of the fender. And we're just kind of knocking the high spots off here. So you can see it's hitting here, but not there, right? So we're going to come down like this. I'm not going to get carried away, end up taking it too low. But we want to take the bulk off the top. And I can see my edge of my work right there. So I'm holding pressure a little more over here, and these cheese graters aren't perfectly flat. They always got a little curve to them. So you want to be mindful of that. And just use your eyes and watch what you're doing. Now, you can see we have a little bit of body filler in there. So if we left that alone, it'd harden and be even harder to get out. So what you do, you just follow the little serrations here with your wire brush, and you wire that right out of there, okay? Now I figured this trick out some time ago. I wish I'd learned it years ago. So it does help a lot. Keep it clean. And then now this feels pretty good, okay? So I'm going to go cheese grade the other two spots that I did, and then we'll talk about what we move forward from here. Okay, now we have all the body filler on, the first coat, on all the areas we had prepped. So it's time to get some sanding done. So I'm going to be using 36 grit on my little short board here. You may think that's a little aggressive, but you want to go rough, really a coarse grit, so you can kind of sculpt the body filler. Right now we're just trying to get it in the shape we want. We'll move to a finer grit later to smooth it out, then we'll get it into prime. So go with a heavier grit. You can use 36 grit, 40 grit works well as well. You kind of need to rough that out. It keeps you from pushing too hard, and you're just kind of sculpting it. You know, if you start pushing too hard, you can distort the panel while you're sanding, and then you're not going to get good results. So I've got a couple of tips here for you to keep your sandpaper from loading up while you're sanding fresh body filler. Is run your hand over the panel. It's probably dusty from sanding, right? Run your hand over the panel and then rub your hand over the areas with the fresh body filler that you just cheese grated. What this does, it dusts it up and it helps keep the sandpaper from loading up as much. So also another tip, just like with a cheese grater, I have my little wire brush here, and you'll see me sand and then stop and just give it a little once over with a wire brush, and it cleans those things out, the little bits that are trying to stick inside the grit of the sandpaper. It works pretty well. So you'll see me do that and try to get this sandpaper to last a lot longer than it normally would. Once they get down inside there and load up, then you're not sanding anymore. You're just gliding over the top of all the stuff that's stuck in your sandpaper. So be sure to try these tips out. They work really well, and it saved me a lot of sandpaper over the years. Okay, let's see about shaping this out. So what I like to do, what works for me, is I sand the perimeter. I can see the repair. So what I try to do is I sand the perimeter and bring all this back down to the base paint or material. It could be steel. And then I get that feathered in, shaped into that shape all the way around, and then I bring that towards the middle. Okay, so I get this done first, and then I basically just simply close in on the middle of the repair. All right, so see, knocks it right out. And you can even take some of that, you just sand it off and dust the other areas. So while I'm sanding, I'm trying to match the contour of the fender and not just go like this. I'm really rolling over that fender shape so it comes out. The body filler starts taking the shape of the fender. Now you notice right here, you can see a distinct line where we ground and the body filler was laid in. So I know this is going to be too low. Okay, so I can tell already just by feeling this, we're going to be just a little too low, which is fine. We'll hit it with another coated body filler, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to get this worked out on these other areas, and then we're going to see about shaping this out a little bit and even sanding in here a little bit so we scuff that up a little bit for the next coat of body filler. Sandpaper's still pretty clean, right? So that dust, you just move it over to your other spots and help dust those up. So we can see here, we have a distinct line where the grind was. I can just see it right there, so we're getting really close here. But just by sanding and overlapping, the block is actually bridging over, and it's not touching, it's not really cutting here. I mean, we're super close, but we're not close enough. So your normal instinct is, well, I want to sand that so it's all sanded. The problem with that is you're not really making this the right shape. You're smoothing it out, but is that going to be a little flat spot, or is that going to be an uneven spot? So as I run my hand over it, I can feel right here, this is coming on with a nice radius, a nice curve, and then I can feel a little bump right there. So I know this needs to be built up and brought back out here. So out here, we're doing really good. And over here, we're doing good. But we're a little low right here, and I can see my line there. So you can see by working from the perimeter in, it actually shows you what you need to do. So this area right here is still too low. So we're gonna come back to this. I'm gonna scuff this up a little bit, and then I know that I need to come back and put another coat on there. So I'm just gonna go crisscross across here. And that's prepped, ready for some more body filler. Of course, we'll blow it off, wipe it down, make sure it's dust free before we put another coat on it. But that right there is as close as we're gonna go right now. We're gonna have to put another coat on that one. All right, so all of these are gonna get a second coat, except this one, maybe one other. I'll map it out. But prepping for another coat of body filler is very important. A lot of people don't take enough necessary steps to make sure they're gonna get a good bond with the next layer. So, of course, This is sanded off. We know we're going to need it here. I'm going to probably lay over the whole area, but you got to get in there with your spray nozzle, and I mean, you got to get right in there because there's little pores in here, and you got to blow all the stuff out. I've already cleaned this, but you run your hand over it with this air kind of going underneath your hand, and that creates speeds it up quite a bit. Then you get in with the point of it and just get right down in there. If there are any air pockets or little pinholes, you're going to blow all that sanding dust out. So when you put your next coat on there, you're not going to have a void with a big chunk of sanding dust at the bottom and then the body filler going right over the top. You want to blow that completely clean out so you can get a really good bond and fill those pinholes. Because later, if you don't fill the pinholes, later you're going to try to have to do it in prime. And that's going to be a little more difficult because the primer tends to bridge over pinholes, whereas when you're laying body filler down, you're actually physically squeegeeing it into the holes. So make sure you do a really good clean on your body filler before you go and get ready to put another coat on. It's very important.
Okay, we're going to have to end this video right here. It's getting way too long already. There'll be a part 1 and part 2, so look for part 2. I'll get it out right away, and we'll get these fenders finished up and ready for prime.